on you on servicing vehicles at over-invoiced prices, because Toyota and Motorcare and others will not over-invoice when they are servicing their own car. So the corruption, you park it there. That's the point that gives you many benefits. Social and economic service provision should be based on standards, based on statistics, evidence, not political jurisdictions. We cannot say we must have a primary school in every parish. We must have a hospital in every district. These serve population numbers. So we are saying we are going to go by the numbers. Road construction units. PSS here you are being pushed to buy road construction for the remaining districts. Some of them have only 150 kilometers of roads. It's not far. America went after inflation, they have destroyed their banking system. Or so we think. It might still be strong.
Dr. Muhumuza and Mr. Wariga left us with more questions. Imagine from where we began, having looked at the report from 2022 and where we stand right now. The two questions were, is debt helping the private sector to grow? The other question was, is debt hurting the private sector or not? And I know that there's a lot of representation of the private sector, and I know it's a concern. Now, at the end of this policy dialogue, we still need to get answers because we have generated more questions. Where are the answers? I believe that the panel that was selected this day will give us the answers in regards to solutions. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, on to our panel discussion, which is next on the agenda, looking at the implications and sustainability of Uganda's public debt. Allow me to invite Mr. Onege Obel, Uganda Investment Bank, to the front. You're most welcome. As he takes Still, we're going to be having Stephen Kaboyo, Alpha Capital Markets. And finally, Mr. Richard Sewachiganda for the representation of the civil society organization. Without further ado, getting into the preamble, I would like to ask each one of my panelists the same question. However, they come from different backgrounds and represent different elements of the discussion this morning. Starting with Mr. Onege Obel, with your experience, and I know that we had a similar dialogue a few weeks ago on Morning at MTV. In regards to the implications, where do we stand in the sustainability of Uganda's public debt?
This was one.
Let me first start by saying I'm an investment banker. I don't belong to any. I think somebody mentioned it. What did you say? Investment banker? Yeah. I'm an investment banker. My footprint is with the Uganda Securities Exchange and all mutual EOP financial services. At all mutual EOP financial services, we are now the largest unit trust managers in Uganda and the second largest in East Africa. So that is my footprint, and that's where I'm coming from. First of all, let me begin by saying that we welcome this engagement. It's come from a long way, and we think that we should bring the capital markets industry closer to the decision-making table so that we can contribute to doing what we all want. Now on debt, let me go straight to the chase. In the private sector and from our industry, we really do not have a problem with debt. By definition, countries and business entities must contract debt in order to grow. The you do not contract debt, then you do not have a strategy for growth. So I want to put it out there. This does not mean that we should not engage each other on the sustainability of debt. We are not very uncomfortable with our level of debt right now. We are uncomfortable with what it is doing. Why are we not uncomfortable with this level of debt? Uganda, should it choose, and this is what we are pushing for, should it choose to look inward? As a fund manager, Ugandans are ready to invest in their own economy. Policy action should be tweaked to target the desire of Ugandans to invest in their own economy. As you know, even as we speak, Ugandans are we invest longest in our economy, from homesteads to industries. I saw the chart presented by Dr. Muhuza. That was the chart on the, no, it was not Dr. Muhuza, it was a gentleman from the Bank of Uganda, the bond market chart. If you notice, the yields are being generated for bonds only up to 15 years. We don't have a 30-year signal. But we are investing in 30-year notes in Kenya. Let us have a conversation so that Ugandans who wish to invest long term in their own economy, let's have that conversation so that we introduce a 30-year bond signal in this market. We are also not very comfortable with the projections of growth rates. We know in the capital markets industry and in the private sector that we can do much better. We can grow at what we call the job creating rate of 8 points per annum, year on year. What does that do? If we grew 8 points of GDP growth year on year for say 5 years, what that does is it helps this country to reduce on the worries about debt. Because if we say in the private sector, it's better to grow the economy than to constrict it through what we call, somebody mentioned, fiscal consolidation. We can grow out of our debt problems by growing the economy. Now, when we are saying, come to us, let's engage. Come to the Ugandan, who is now packing billions of dollars in the fund. There's a lot of money in mobile money. That sounds like an oxymoron. There's a lot of money in mobile money. That money, if we engage, we can share. We have some ideas on how that money can be channeled into the economy. Rather than even going to my friend here, Rachel. Rachel's money is very useful, but it can be parked for emergencies. But for development, for infrastructure and so on, Ugandans have money. I speak with some level of authority because we are investing that money. Ugandans are parking their money with us, and we are investing that money. So let's make that effort to continue this engagement at a more serious level, so that we arrive at solutions. I've been 35, 40 years in this business, And year on year, we see ourselves discussing around more or less the same issues. But we think now, this economy, with its natural resources, with its gold, with its oil, but the most important, with its population, we think we can perform far beyond the levels which are currently constrained by what we call poor quality debt. When you get short-term FDI coming into this economy, it causes problems, including inflationary pressures and so on. But if we borrow from our own people, domestic direct investment, then we think this conversation can be taken to another level. Finally, a plan, I think the planners will agree with me here, a plan is not a strategy. We need to move to actual investment-grade strategies. There's a chart which was presented by Dr. Muhumuza again, with the yellow head in the middle. So many, the to-do list is a lot. But that to-do list is actually not a lot if each of them is converted into an investment.
An idea or a framework that can actually be of aid in these deliberations this morning. Of course, now that pushes us to capital markets, and we do have Mr. Kaboyo here for capital markets. In regards to what Mr. Oneg has shared, in your opening remarks, bringing capital markets closer to the decision table is something that you have talked about over and over again. Why is it becoming a reality?
Thank you very much, moderators, and thank you very much for the organizers for inviting me. To answer directly the moderator's question, I want to a little bit shift into sort of three areas that I wanted to touch on, and the answer will come. Firstly, I just want to make very quick comments on the DSA results. They're quite comforting. Very good to hear. It's music to many of us. Personally, I would like to thank Matthias. A couple of weeks ago, we met and he shared, was very excited to share with me the DSA report that I have not seen. So thank you, Mr. Pierce. But again, with your and then debt express. So we are stage 2, cancer patient. No, that's a joke. But what I'm saying, it's very easy to gain comfort in that, but we could easily slip over into high risk category. So we need to be a little bit careful. The other issue I wanted to raise is we need a holistic approach to look at this debt issue. And my view, and I personally would like to avoid two words, the sustainability and unsustainability, and use another term, debt overhang. Debt overhang literally means the situation we're in. We are able to borrow, but we are impaired in our capacity to be able to service our debts. So I want to avoid sustainability, reduce this new issue of debt overhang. Now, we are not necessarily in bad shape from what we hear, according to the DSA results. But again, taking a holistic approach, we need to look at other warning signals that could creep up that we may not take into account when doing DSA. And I would like to pick up one issue. There are many other eyes that follow countries with their indebtedness. One is what Dr. Muhumuza pointed out, sovereign rating. It's a good signal to watch. While Dr. Muhumuza mentioned Fitch, recently, very recently, Moody's downgraded our sovereign rating from a B stable to a B minus to the negative outlook. I think think that's a very strong signal that goes out to investors who would be interested in lending in Uganda, but because of that impairment, financing will come at a very expensive rate. So that's another issue that I wanted to raise in terms of having a holistic approach to looking at our debt issues. I'll quickly move on to, because of time, to good things that the Ministry of Finance is doing, and then I'll talk about the bad things that they're not doing. I'll avoid being controversial, but since we have this opportunity to share, let me speak about the good things that the PS and the team are doing. One is a touch on the transparency bit of it. Debt issues have become very, very visible. We discussed it quite often, and I think this discussion needs to go on. Until recently, there's been a lot of mistrust in terms of who has the right numbers. Is it Parliament? Is it the Ministry of Finance? Is it Bank of Uganda? Is it us? The private sector? Is it civil society? So there was sort of a mix-up in terms of where you get a good number. But the website, visited the Ministry of Finance website. I think we need to give you, commend you for good work and sharing information, which is very relevant at this point in terms of our debt dynamics. The other issue is the efforts to cut expenditure. Recently, the PS came out with a statement cutting expenditure, non-travel abroad, cars, not being, suspending car procurements and things like that. All those are good efforts. Let that also continue. The public investment financing strategy that was recently launched is a good thing. However, I think more work needs to be done in terms of certain things that we have in our framework. PPPs, public-private partnerships, have been cited. We have the framework, but we have not seen full optimization in that space. Maybe going forward, this is something that we need to look at. Fiscal consolidation is also a good thing. Let me also, as I conclude on the good things we are doing, the temptation to go to the capital markets, international capital markets, is a good thing. Our peers are suffering because of this. A few years ago, I was one of the advocates pushing government to go to the international capital markets, but now I think I can revise my recommendation and say it would have been a bad thing. So PS and team, you've been very consistent on avoiding that. The other issue that we have avoided, and perhaps it's very important in terms of the macroeconomic framework, is printing money, avoiding seniority to financial deficits. So this is also a plus which we give you with your team and government at large. So what are the issues that you're not doing right? Overhead holistic forecast. Every year we have failed financial budget today. We have failed to meet revenue targets. But every year you see a budget that is increasing. Last year, 2021, 2022, 45, now 50. We failed to finance the old one. Where are the resources going to come from to finance the 50 trillion forecast? So are we going to see reviews, budget reviews, reduction in this last quarter? So this forecast needs to be aligned to realistic revenues that you are able to generate. At the institutional level, I think there's, we need to admit that there are gaps or weaknesses at every stage of the expenditure cycle. I think those need to be flagged. Budget overruns, supplementaries have already been talked about, emanating from political pressures. Those, I think, have to be managed as we go forward. The other issue which is also critical is prioritizing our financial needs. We know where we have come from. Part of the problems that we have today, in my own view, is because we front-loaded too many infrastructure projects at the beginning. It's good to invest in productive sectors of the economy, but you have to know that your envelope is limited. You can only take on what you can see. So for me, I believe that we need to realign, match our current needs, requirements with our investment plans, so that there is no mismatch. The other issue, of course, is the disbursements must be aligned to the investment timeline that we have. And of course, importantly, the maturity spread must be aligned to the investment return projects. We cannot just do projects which do not have a good return just because of political pressure, balancing interest. So a proper business case for each project must be produced. I earlier on talked about PPPs. I think we need fully optimized PPP framework. Then the other two last issues are restructuring and refinancing our debt. I think it's not too early to start thinking along those lines. The efforts that you have been doing in terms of bond switches to avoid redemption challenges are good, but you need to refocus and perhaps be able to look at how can this substitution of debt also refinancing, let me put it this way, refinancing expensive debt and replacing it for longer term cheaper debt. When you look at our average time to maturity, on the external it's about 11 years. On the domestic side, it's about 5.5 years. That is too short in terms of avoiding refinancing risks. So, PS and the team, I think you need to keep your eyes on that.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Kawio. Turning to you, Lisa, on the other hand.
Too long, but
no, we're going to continue with that. But let me turn to Ms. Rachel Sawode. With your analysis and assessment so far, there was something that was mentioned, and that was a plan isn't a strategy. There's also something else that came through in our earlier conversations, that in one way or another, there's always the element of unpreparedness, first of all, to receive this help, the financial help, but then also to actually implement it within the peppered framework. Why is that so?
Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, in all your respective capacities. I join everyone else to thank the organizers, especially the Ministry of Finance, to bring the debt issue to a public discourse, because I think, if I'm not wrong, every time we come out with an economic update, we are talking about debt. And it's coming from external partners bringing that issue to the table. But it's so important that this issue comes from internal, from government, so that it can be discussed. Thank you very much for the questions, but I wanted to also talk a little bit about the question of sustainability before I go to your question. I hope I'll have the time. Because as part of our work, we also do a debt sustainability assessment every year. It is part of our monitoring, probably because partly we are one of the biggest lenders or providers of finance, but it's also because of the development aspect. How is the country moving on, and how sustainable is the debt that it's acquiring is. Maybe one first issue is that should the country be borrowing? That was a question, I think that was put in one of the presentations. Borrowing is not bad. I think at whichever entity, economic entity that you look at, if you don't have sufficient resources, you can borrow. But what is important is how do you use the resources at the end of the day, and how big is your debt. So when we do the assessment, our last one was for the financial year 2021. Apologies for that. all the time we come up with these assessments, at least the last one was consistent with what the ministry has. And because we are following the same framework anyway, the low income debt assessment framework. So we come up with the same level of, we use the same framework. The numbers might be different a little bit. Last time we were talking about a debt level of probably reaching 53% by next financial year. You've seen the numbers, they are all below 50. One of the explanations, and thanks to government for the prudent macro management, you've seen the comparisons across countries. Our variables have actually, that we compare to GDP, have actually gained in terms of becoming better, because the GDP increased, I think, by around 18%. If you are at 100, the GDP levels moved on average by 18% to 118. And when we do the DSA, it is not just a mere statement, and that's what the DSA is talking about, because it looks a long-term view of what are the disbursements, what are the profiles of debt going to be, and how is the economy going to perform, how is GDP going to perform, what are the revenues, what are the exports. And then you bring it back together, all those future flows, and you say, yes, we are able to. But in terms of the short-term, day-to-day management of the budget, debt becomes a problem because it is consuming, what was the number I said, 40-something of our revenues. So that is something that we have to look at. And one of the reasons that came on board, those charts, they can be easy to put up there, but when you come to connect them, he showed that the short-term debt, the commercial debt, all the other types of high-interest debt are increasing. The World Bank, apologies to talk about the multilateral, but at least that debt, if you take it today, you have 10 years, first of all, okay. So it's not impacting on your immediate day-to-day servicing of your debt. Secondly, you pay it over, if you got a child today, there will be adults and they will have children by the time you finish paying this debt. Or we can put it another way, that they will also be part of the problem because they will be paying. It has a maturity period of 38 years. And what does this mean? It means that as we substitute into the shorter term where you have to pay, like, I think some of the budget support will borrow, you have to pay the next year. And the entire amount, you have to pay the next year, it's high cost. So it makes the management, day-to-day management of the debt a bit difficult. And the other issue I wanted to point out is, so what do we see as important if this is the issue? Of course, many, especially the PS has mentioned that revenue mobilization and the DRMS, and we fully all support that, and our effort to put into more compliance. But what I did, so if we are 14 today, and we didn't have those tax expenditures, we would have been at the level of the average African pay to remain on the minimum. Then on the expenditure side, again, the measures to rationalize, to make sure that we cut expenditures are welcome, although those also have to be done properly in order not to hurt so much some of the sectors. But another critical issue, which I've only had probably Mr. Kaboyo touch upon, is on the expenditure side. Most of the borrowing is for public investments. But Mr. P.S., I didn't hear any mention in your remarks or the Ministry of Finance's presentation about how to manage these projects. How do we choose the projects that we are going to invest in? How do we prepare them? And that comes to the question that she was asking. How do we implement them? Because at the end of the day, if you don't get a return on these investments, then we can't service the debt. At the end of the day, if you don't do these projects properly, they're supposed to be the catalyst. They're supposed to be close. First of all, we do them so that we can address that constraints that private sector is facing. So if we are not, we've been investing for over 10 years. I think the first time we started to do an investment drive was 2008-9, for those who have been around, or 2008-9. We ramped up expenditures in infrastructure. But when you look at private investment, what has happened? The presentation from Dr. Muhumuza and the other professor touched a little bit about that. But my issue is about, have we been able to actually invest and reduce the cost of investment for the private sector, reduce transport costs, reduce the cost of electricity. We can have it here shining, and it's not going off, which is good. But the cost at which the private sector is actually operating to get this power on board is very high and harming the investment that should be supported.
Thank you very much, Russia. Allow me to just pause you there before the lights go off, just in case they go off. Now, Richard, of course, with the improvement and consistency in the transparency and availability of figures to be able to do the comparison and contrast, and then do the assessment and evaluation where we stand as of this morning, something has come out. Resource utilization versus the size of debt. And with the advocacy work that you are doing, with those two aspects, what's your response in terms of the implications on sustainability of Uganda's public debt?
Thank you very much. Richard Sawaziyanga is my name. I no longer do advocacy, I do research, so apologies if I don't speak on I speak in ways that not represent what Julius wants to hear. But I'm going to still say what he wants to hear. First is I'm going to try and sort of bring this discussion down, because on my left, everybody has said the economic field. And as you know, economics really translates into what happens in our pockets. So when you dip your hand in your pocket, that's where the economics actually should be felt. So many people watching, I'm sure, are wondering what does all these terms mean that they are throwing around. So I'm going to try and just simplify the discussion and say that I think when we talk about this sustainability, we've all talked about it, that as a country, as every country, we need to borrow. So it's not something that is new. I think the only challenge which Albert will have to work with is that this comparison that they are making is what President once called, pygmies comparing each other and asking who is the tallest. Now we have to be very careful with that kind of comparison. It looks good that yes, we are one of the ones where our debt to GDP ratio is okay. But, I think we have to ask our question, are these the kinds of countries that we should be looking at as countries that we should be comparing ourselves? And actually, I think in economics, we also know that when you look at global economies, there are many countries where the GDP tax ratio is way into the 100% and whatever. But what allows them to continue to work properly is the strength of their institutions, the predictability, the fact that they are not corrupt, or they manage their corruption, not that they are not corrupt. I think those are the things that really look at. When you look at, for example, the presentation that Dr. Muhumuza I've just shared with us, he has been very clear. His last slide didn't talk about the sustainability. He just took us to the fact that the things we need to do are really about how we manage the whole public sector. And these are going to be things where we have to be, I think the PS policy, where we have to be more fiscal consolidation and make sure that we don't have as many excesses. I mean, would love to see, for example, a simple indicator in this country is the sirens in this country should be coming from ambulances, not from police cars. It's just a simple indicator. If you look around this city and you listen to the sirens when you are in your car, it's highly likely that the person coming behind you is not sick, but is a vehicle. And that is a very small thing, but it tells you a lot about how much we are spending on our public sector that we must be reducing. So I think it is those kinds of very honest discussions that we should have around how we can cut those kinds of costs. We talked about fleets of cars. I think that is something that will help, because the PS is going to get this money from us. It's not going to come from anywhere else. So in a sense, we must make sure that the sector, the public itself, is able to see the benefit. The other thing I wanted to mention, which I think is critical also, is Uganda as a landlocked country. I think we have to behave like a landlocked country. PS said that a landlocked country needs railways. That's very important for things to pass through. But also a landlocked country needs stable neighborhoods. Because if you are in the village and you pass through other people's gardens to get to your home, you better make sure that you have a good relationship with those where you pass. Right now, I think we don't have a bad relationship, but what is happening in the region, I think should concern us, because it has quite an implication. Even if you look at the oil sector and where it's located, the geopolitics in that region means that we must create a regional political consensus around how to sort out the issues in the DRC. We now need to think about how to sort out the issues in Nairobi, where it may still be the one-day affair. You know, we have to start thinking about that. We also have to look at other global dynamics that are also very important for our own, as a landlocked country, but also as a low-income country. I think the actions of the parliament yesterday, while they were populist and they could be something that we love to hear, but it's going to be a very high cost for Ramadan to actually have these negotiations starting this week. We can hide behind our populism and put on our nice, this, that, and walk around, but that's something that is now on our table. And it has a huge implication for debt sustainability. And we should realize that sometimes what we do at policy level has a huge cost on what happens in the economy. And yet, I don't think that the politicians are making those connections when they do that. And that is the same even with this Marathi fiasco that has ended. That when you start having such things in the public sector, the kind of rating, confidence comes down. And that's not good for anyone who is in the sector. I think the other important thing, and also globally, is because we have to recognize that globally we have a lot of anger in the globe. There are many people who are drowning war drums, Ukraine, Russia, this, let us send tanks, let us do this. Very few people are speaking peace. And so we can't join that. We have to find a way in which we go into the location where we speak about how to create stability, how to create consensus. In Uganda, personally, what I keep calling for is some kind of elite consensus where we sort of have people coming from different political divides starting to speak about what Uganda do we want and how should it look like. So that if you have even things like the parish development model, the energy that is used in Parliament yesterday should have been used in the parish development model, because I think if it was used there, it would have had a much better yield for us as citizens. So I guess that for me, it is to bring those, what you would call political economy issues, to bear on the economics. And I think that's where we should be coming to, especially in this discussion. So I guess that for me, those are the things that I would love to think about. this business of us running the money lender to pay the bank is wrong. We have to do something about that. And I'm putting it simply because that's what people understand. When you have a loan in a bank and then you run to the money lender because you have to pay the bank. Because that's what we are doing. We are going to the commercial banks. We are going to the commercial banks. And the commercial lenders who need their money quickly and at a high interest to go and pay those ones who need their money for long time.
Thank you so much.
So we need to deal with those kinds of issues. But fundamentally, I think that that sustainability can only be solved through looking at the political economy that surrounds how we manage our debt.
And the political economy is actually very paramount. It's not as dangerous as some of our leaders make it look. It's very, very much a good element in this discussion that we're having. When it comes to PBs comparing themselves to Stola, maybe Charles Utola, to continue this conversation.
Thank you, sir. Very interesting discussion. And of course, when you talk about the money lender and the bank analogy, I'm quite happy that we have the World Bank in the house. So before I open the discussion to the audience, I really wanted to speak to Rachel about this, because you mentioned the issue of concessional loans that the bank gives, I mean the 10-year period and the other benefits that come with it. And I think you can think about this, for response on how best can government engage, the bank for more concessional loans, so that we don't see the PSST going more for these kind of loans that Mr. Sewachiremba is referring to. So at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, we are opening the discussion to you all. So for any question, we're going to have a mic moving around. I've seen Mr. Katamba. So let me request someone to take a mic to Mr. Katamba. Sarah Miretti, we're happy to have you. I'm sure you have a question there as well.
Go.
So we can have a set of 3 first. Let's keep them short and brief.
Of an average citizen watching in their living room today without the overhang of any institution. So quite a free mind actually. First of all, I would like to thank all the presenters today. First, the PSST for elaborating the strategy to deal with the challenge we see with today. But I want to just point out a few contradictions and then just highlight one aspect. Dr. Mbuza, thank you very much for the presentation. The researcher, talking about the data on domestic borrowing not being separated. It's available actually in the booklet from Ministry of Finance. I found that a little bit disturbing. We have not yet seen any of the impact of the potential of the Dutch disease. That is only possible until we strike first oil, and then you see how that sector really does impact the rest of the economy sector. We have also spoken today like life is normal, like it was pre-2020. Yet in the PSST's presentation, we saw that between June 2020 and June 2022, debt to GDP went up from 41% to 48.4%. We should not be speaking about debt sustainability. In a country like Uganda, we should actually be speaking about vulnerability, because we're just one shock away from stage 2 to stage 4 and beyond. If that was the impact of COVID-19. Again, in the data we saw the jump for last year alone, between February and April, the effect of Ukraine. Again, that further demonstrates the level of vulnerability for our economy. And I dare say not too sure how far we are from the next shock. We just might be in the beginning of it from our recent decisions, but also there is a time lag between what happens in the developed world and what it impacts our economy. So whatever we're seeing with SBB and all of that, the changing in market prices across the globe, that will also hit here. So we need to prepare and, if you like, buckle up. I just want to close with one thing. If you find yourself driving a car into a craft, it was largely intended for us to then focus on the areas of vulnerability, particularly where poverty was hitting the worst and debt repayment was affecting our ability to invest in those areas. What I would call the software people. With one of the youngest populations in the world, if our public expenditure is largely on infrastructure, what I can call hardware, and in a presentation like today, there's little said about people and productivity and how this country will be able to work itself out if it's the private sector that will provide sustainability for the government to meet its obligations at the lowest cost, which essentially is the objective of debt management. Then we need another session to talk about how we transform the human capital of Uganda. Because all the challenges that you get relate to the quality of people that you have. So to reduce vulnerability, I just want to argue that's one area we need to focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members. Points well taken. I'm sure some will be covered in the submission of the cases team. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you very much, our distinguished speakers and panelists of the day. Sarah Biret is my name. I'm the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. I want to talk about 3 issues. And the first one is on strategies for creating more capacity to increase the tax base. The PSS the tax base by changing the lives of the people, as highlighted by Professor Barima. The parish development model is, if we take the first year as a pilot, are there efforts to review the challenges and re-strategize to make sure that it does not follow what has happened to previous similar projects? Or what are the other efforts in the tax base in Uganda so that more revenue to cover our budget needs? The citizens appreciate that there is value in the borrowing for that project. What are we borrowing for? What are we celebrating in comparison with the neighbors? Are we celebrating poverty? Are we celebrating stagnation? We are supposed to be having a standard gauge level as Uganda. As we say, Tanzania is at 40, Kenya is at this. What do we have? What have we been borrowing for? We spend money in things like Ruwa Hospital, Bujagali Dam, the report is before Parliament, damming report on theft and corruption.
I think a number of questions and comments are going directly. Those we want now, and for comments, for solutions, please. So we can have the gentleman over there.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Maurice Ekwan. I am an Assistant Commissioner of Policy and Planning in the Ministry of Public Service. I have 3 very brief issues to put across. One, let me provide solutions. People have talked about numbers. I want to bring it down a little bit to solutions. I would like to pick the investments we have made in the Albertine sub-region. Several billions and many more are still going in. Then, for instance, we have invested 280 million euros at that cargo airport. That cargo airport will bring in cargo from out and will go back empty. We will not load anything in the cargo plane that has landed and it has gone back. Now here's the solution. Can we deliberately create a production corridor from Toro, Uganda, Bunyoro, part of Lago up to West? We sit back comfortably and say we have comparative advantage in food production, in this case agriculture. So can that be deliberate? That is the solution. Create production belt in that sub-region. Point number 2.